I remember we had a whole wall in the studio where we all put up our ideas. Remember that? I think everyone just put up their ideas for a game, and that's where, a lot of the weapons and gadgets and the character of that eventually became Ratchet and Clank just showed up on the wall. That's my memory. And it was very, we were all working individually, but at a point we collaborated as well. And then once the idea was suggested, everyone just started riffing off it, and it was a really creative time.
But some things from I-5 actually carried over to Ratchet and Clank, the new I-5.
Yeah, we looked at some games like Zelda for inspiration. I remember that was something that Mark talked about quite a bit. And, we certainly built that arena, which was just a bunch of monks in this round arena area with these two dragons, or like these Komodo dragons that you were riding. Actually, they weren't dragons, they were just giant lizards. And you were there shooting fireballs at each other. And so I think some of that inspiration, because there was some element of just fighting inside this big arena that felt really good, that I think we later took to the Ratchet games. And then, of course, just having giant creatures that you have to fight, the big stone mech that you were fighting with the staff is something that we probably carried over to Going Commando, with you fighting that big mech in that area, being chased around. I think there's a number of things. Not necessarily these direct connections, but there's a lot of things that we just learned throughout that whole design process. Yeah,
one of the biggest carryovers that I recall is in the I-5 universe, there was this fantasy world, and then this other mysterious race called Celestials came down and imposed their architecture and their style onto this world. And I think the words we used to describe there were these dark, shiny structures that I think we used the word chitinous to describe it, like kind of plates on insects. And to me, that really describes the Chimeran stuff in Resistance. And when I look back at the old work, I can see this very strong connection. I don't know if that's conscious or not, but there was a connection to that.
You were drawing a lot of that stuff, weren't you?
Yeah, not so much the Resistance stuff. That's why I got so much better.
Resistance, so, yeah.
And just as many items carried from I-5 into Ratchet and Clank, a lot of things from Spyro carried into I-5.
Maybe this isn't correct, but I recall most of our enemies in the I-5 test had underbites. And all of our creatures in Spyro had that. The Norks were all, and it was just a design that we liked.
Yet some things were very different than Ratchet and Clank.
And I think we had a very conscious line we drew where they couldn't have technology. The houses and buildings were lashed together with vines and poles, and things were built out of rocks with thatched roofs. So very, very different from Ratchet, and away from Spyro, which had castles and other fantastic things that way. This was much more kind of primitive, I guess, with magic.
She had to rely on a lot of magic to get around. I remember we talked about her sticking a staff in the wall and being able to twirl around and leap from one location to another. Her tattoo would glow bright blue whenever she would dance a kata and get a new spell. And there was these kata symbols, I think, that were on the stone rocks or on the ground that would glow when she danced.
We had one mechanic where she could, to get through walls or locked doors, she could turn into smoke and pass through kind of bars or whatnot. I don't know if we ever got that off of paper, but it sounded pretty cool.
There's a book, I think, this thick somewhere in the studio that was like the whole design. Or maybe it's this thick. That's the design Bible for I-5. To track that down.
Many newer Insomniac fans only know Girl with the Stick as Resistance 2 beta. But what they don't realize is that Girl with the Stick is sort of an inside running joke.
It's just been this kind of inside joke, I guess. Not a joke, it just is this nostalgia thing. Yeah, it's nostalgia is what it is. It's just we think back about that with mixed feelings, like some happy feelings that we kind of dodged a bullet, and some sad feelings like what could have been, and so just when you say Girl with a Stick, it means something to us, and we needed something, and there it was.
And really, it's the only project we've ever completely ditched. Everything else has gone through its various permutations, and resistance evolved significantly, as you mentioned before.
But when were people certain that canceling I-5 was the right decision?
I have a very specific moment in mind, but it may be different than yours. What's yours?
I think we didn't know until Ratchet was a success but it felt good right away. It felt like the right thing, even like the day of.
I was going to say, actually, it was when we presented the proof of concept to Sony.
That's true.
Because we had 2 levels that we had totally faked. I mean, and Sony knew it, too.
Yeah.
We put it together with our existing technology to create Metropolis and a spaceport level. And we had the big city with cars flying through it and the gardens on the rooftops. And Ratchet had the suck cannon and I think a couple other weapons, maybe the Parositor.
Yeah, they weren't really working.
But they transformed.
Yeah,
and that was
running around. Yeah,
it showed the promise
really cool.
of the game. And when Sony was down here, and Jack Tretton was one of the people down, he was head of marketing at that point, and I remember him saying, "This is going to work. I get this."
He was like, "This is going to be huge."
Yeah, that's right.
It was that was a moment where we're like, "Okay, this is going to be great."
Yeah, that felt like the critical mass. And then I remember when we showed Ratchet at E3 the first time, my memory is we didn't have our lighting. We were missing a lot of things, and we showed these levels, and people just went nuts. And that's, when people from the outside know that it's going to be cool, that's when I got really confident.
I think it's sometimes there's that old phrase, "kill your babies," and I think that's a big lesson that we all learned, is that you can be really close to something, but if it's just not working, and repeatedly you're hearing from your team that it's not working, that sometimes it's just best to kill it and move on to something new. And hopefully we've learned that on a smaller level now, where it's, if a feature in a game's not working, you kill that feature, and we avoid getting to the point where we have to kill the game.
Yeah, I feel it's taken me 10 years to realize this, but we spent so much time on paper and discussions and arguments about the game, and if we had just started making it and playing it, I think we could have learned those lessons a lot quicker, and that's something we've really committed to now, and it's making things a lot better.
Yeah, I think I just kind of got to listen to your gut instincts. I think our gut instincts, like all of us, kind of knew it wasn't working, and we didn't know the solution to it. But in our hearts, we kind of knew that we should probably kind of go back to more of our roots of what we're good at.
And I'll add that I think often when we're starting a project, there is that time where an idea will come up and everybody immediately recognizes it, and that's when we have to trust our instincts and jump early versus second guessing ourselves, because we tend to do that a lot too with great ideas.
That's all for this week's episode of the Full Moon Show. Thanks for listening to this retrospective about I-5, Girl with the Stick. We'll be back in the next couple of weeks with a retrospective on Resistance, Fall of Man. Ever wanted to wonder what happened during the early days of development on the PlayStation 3 when Resistance was a futuristic space opera featuring time travel, and how it evolved into the 1950s alternate history, runaway smash success PlayStation 3 launch title that released in 2006. Stay tuned for the video episode, and once again afterwards we'll follow a week later with the expanded audio discussion. If you have comments or feedback, please email us at podcast@insomniacgames.com or send us a message on our Facebook wall or at Insomniac Games on Twitter. We would love to hear from you on what you think about these new shows, and we can't wait to bring you more. From everyone here at Insomniac Games, this is James Stevenson signing off for the Full Moon Show.